Part 1. The meeting room on Station Vigilance Prime was designed to hold the most important beings in the galaxy. The walls curved upward like the inside of an egg, smooth and white, with seats arranged in a half-circle facing a raised platform. Holographic displays floated in the air, ready to show whatever information the presenter needed. The lighting was dim, adjusted to be comfortable for the many different species that had gathered here today. Senior analyst stood on the platform, her four arms held close to her body in the traditional posture of serious concern. Her species, had evolved on a world where everything wanted to eat them. They had survived by being careful, by being watchful, by never letting their guard down. These traits had made them excellent intelligence analysts, and was the best of them all. She looked out at the assembled delegates and felt her chromatophores pulse with anxiety. The colors that moved across her skin would tell any that she was deeply worried, but most of the beings in this room were not, and they could not read her emotional display. That was probably for the best. If they knew how scared she was, they might not believe what she was about to tell them. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice steady despite her fear, "thank you for responding to my emergency summons. I know that many of you had to cancel important meetings to be here. I would not have called you unless the matter was of the highest importance." A soft murmur passed through the room. Emergency summons were rare. The last one had been 40 standard years ago, when the Silicate Collective had discovered a planet-eating void creature at the edge of the galaxy. Whatever had to share, it had to be serious. "As you know," she continued, "the Galactic Intelligence Services has been monitoring a young species in the outer spiral arm. They call themselves humans. They live on a small blue planet they call Earth. We have been watching them for approximately 200 of their years, trying to determine if they are ready for contact with the wider galactic community." She touched a control, and a holographic image of Earth appeared behind her. It was a pretty world, blue and green and white, spinning slowly in the void. "Our initial assessments were positive. Humans are curious, creative, and adaptive. They have developed technology at an impressive rate. They have begun to explore their own solar system. In many ways, they seem like excellent candidates for galactic membership." "Then why are we here?" asked the delegate from the Vigilant Accord. High Commander was a tall being with hard scales and sharp eyes. His species had evolved as predators, and they had no patience for slow explanations. "If the humans are so promising, what is the emergency?" Chromatophores flickered again. "The emergency, High Commander, is that we have discovered something about human behavior that changes everything. Something that calls into question whether they can survive long enough to ever join us." She touched another control, and the image of Earth was replaced by data streams and observation reports. "Our deep cover operatives have spent the last 50 years living among humans, studying their daily lives. What they have found is disturbing." "Define disturbing," said the crystalline representative of the Silicate Collective. Its voice was like wind chimes, musical and cold. "Humans are aware that their world is dangerous," said. "They have excellent scientific knowledge of the threats that surround them. They know about the microscopic organisms that can invade their bodies and kill them. They call these bacteria and viruses. They know about larger parasites that can eat them from within. They know about venomous creatures that can stop their hearts with a single bite. They know about predators that can run faster than them, that are stronger than them, that hunt them for food." She paused to let this sink in. They are a prey species that has somehow risen to the top of their food chain, but they have not forgotten what hunts them. They remember. They study it. They document every way their world can kill them. "This seems like intelligent behavior," said the hive mind ambassador from Chorus Prime. Its voice was a harmony of many tones speaking at once. "Knowing your enemies is the first step to defeating them." "Yes," agreed, "and that is what makes what I am about to tell you so incomprehensible." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Every night for approximately one-third of their planetary rotation, humans become completely unconscious. They lie down, close their eyes, and enter a state of total vulnerability. Their awareness drops to almost nothing. Their ability to respond to threats is severely impaired. They cannot run. They cannot fight. They cannot even see what is coming for them. The room went very quiet. "This is a biological function?" asked High Commander, his voice careful and controlled. "Yes and no," replied. "The biological need exists, but they also choose it. They could develop systems to minimize the vulnerability. They could sleep in shifts, with guards always watching. They could create secure facilities where threats cannot enter. They could develop technology to allow them to rest while remaining partially aware. And they have not done these things." "They have done some of them," admitted, "but not consistently, not universally. The vast majority of humans sleep alone or in small groups, in structures that offer minimal protection, with no guards and no monitoring systems. They do this every single night. And here is the part that I cannot explain." She changed the display again. Now it showed human dwellings at night, houses with thin walls, apartments with windows that could be broken, tents made of fabric that any predator could tear through. "They know the monsters are real," said, her voice dropping low. "They know exactly what can kill them, and they still close their eyes and sleep." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions. Some stood from their seats. The Silicate Collective representative actually cracked along one of its facets, the crystalline equivalent of a shocked gasp. The Chorus Prime ambassador fell into discordant static, its many voices unable to harmonize their confusion. "Order," called the council speaker, a massive being who had remained silent until now. "We will have order." The room slowly settled, but the tension remained. Every delegate was staring at with expressions of disbelief, fear, or confusion. "There must be a mistake," said a small delegate from one of the cautious species. "Your data must be corrupted. No species could survive such behavior." "The data is not corrupted," replied firmly. "We have confirmed it thousands of times with hundreds of operatives over 50 years. Humans sleep, deeply, regularly, despite knowing everything that wants to kill them." "Perhaps they have eliminated the threats," suggested another delegate hopefully. Shook her head. "They have not. The bacteria still exist. The viruses mutate faster than they can develop cures. The parasites still find their way into human bodies. The predators are reduced but not eliminated. And humans have even created new threats for themselves, things they call criminals, who specifically target sleeping humans for violence and theft. And yet they still sleep. Every night." High Commander leaned forward, his predator's eyes narrowing. "Senior Analyst, what is your assessment? Is this species insane, suicidal, or simply too stupid to understand the danger they face?" Was silent for a long moment. Her chromatophores cycled through several colors as she considered how to answer. Finally, she spoke. "I do not know," she admitted. "That is why I called this emergency meeting. In all my years of intelligence work, I have never encountered anything like this. The humans are not stupid. They are clearly intelligent. They are not insane, at least not by any definition we use. And they are not suicidal. They fight very hard to stay alive." "Then explain their behavior," demanded. "I cannot," said. "Not yet. But I believe we must find an answer before we make any decisions about contact. Because a species that can know the monsters are real and still choose to sleep every night is either the most foolish species in the galaxy or the most terrifying." She let those words hang in the air. "I propose we send additional operatives," she continued. "I propose we study this phenomenon more closely. And I propose that, until we understand what we are dealing with, we classify humanity as a potential threat of the highest order." The vote was unanimous. Part 2. Agent had been living on Earth for 2 local years, and he still could not understand these creatures. He sat in his small apartment in a city called Chicago, surrounded by the equipment he used to record his observations, and tried to compose his latest report to headquarters. The problem was that everything he wrote sounded impossible, even to him. Was a species that had evolved on a world of constant threat. His people never truly slept. They entered a state of reduced activity, yes, but part of their mind always remained alert, always watching for danger. The idea of complete unconsciousness was horrifying to him, and yet he watched humans do it every single night. His current subject of study was a human female named Sarah. She was what humans called a nurse, a medical professional who spent her days treating sick and injured members of her species. Had chosen her specifically because he thought her knowledge would make her more careful than other humans. He had been completely wrong. Sarah knew more about the dangers of her world than most humans. She had studied bacteria and viruses in detail. She had seen what parasites could do to a human body. She had treated wounds from animal attacks, from other humans, from accidents that tore flesh and broke bones. Every day, she was surrounded by evidence of how fragile human life could be. And every night, she went home to her small apartment, climbed into her bed, and fell into deep unconsciousness for 8 hours. Had installed monitoring equipment throughout her dwelling. He watched her sleep patterns with a mixture of horror and fascination. Her heart rate would slow. Her breathing would become deep and regular. Her brain activity would shift into patterns that indicated she was completely unaware of her surroundings. During these hours, she was vulnerable to everything. A fire could start and she might not wake in time to escape. A predator could enter her dwelling and she would not know until it was too late. The very bacteria she studied all day could be multiplying in her body, and she would lie there doing nothing about it. But what disturbed most was not the vulnerability itself. It was how much Sarah enjoyed it. She talked about sleep the way they talked about their most sacred rituals. She complained when she did not get enough of it. She celebrated when she got more than usual. She had special clothes for sleeping, special furniture for sleeping, special rituals she performed before sleeping to make the experience better. One evening had worked up the courage to ask her about it. He was using a human disguise, presenting himself as a curious foreigner who did not understand American customs. It was not entirely a lie. "I do not understand," he had said carefully. "You know there are dangers in the world. You know bad things can happen while you are unconscious. Why do you not stay awake?" Sarah had laughed at him. It was a sound of genuine amusement, not mockery, but it still confused him. There was nothing funny about his question. "Well, yeah," she had said, "but I mean, what am I supposed to do? Not sleep. I'd die a lot faster from that than from any monster." "But you could take more precautions," pressed. "You could hire guards. You could install better security. You could sleep in shifts with others." Sarah had looked at him strangely. "That sounds exhausting," she said, "and expensive and honestly, kind of paranoid." Paranoid. She thought taking precautions against known threats was paranoid, had not known how to respond to that. He thought about this conversation now as he wrote his report. He had spent months trying to understand the human perspective on sleep, and he had finally found something that might explain it. It was not rational. It was not logical, but it was deeply, fundamentally human. The humans knew the monsters were real. They had never forgotten. In fact, they seemed almost obsessed with the idea. Their stories were full of creatures that hunted people in the night. Their entertainment industry made billions of dollars from tales of things that attacked sleeping humans. They had invented entire categories of fictional monster, vampires and werewolves and demons, whose main characteristic was that they preyed on the unconscious. But here was the thing that had finally understood. The humans did not tell these stories because they were trying to warn each other to stay awake. They told these stories because they had already decided to sleep anyway, and they wanted to process their fear. It was a kind of defiance. The monsters might be real, but the humans refused to let that stop them from living their lives. They acknowledged the danger, they processed their fear of it, and then they closed their eyes and slept anyway. This was either incredibly stupid or incredibly brave, was not sure which. He had observed other examples of this behavior. Humans who lived in areas prone to natural disasters still slept soundly in their homes. Humans who worked with dangerous materials still rested peacefully at night. Humans who had survived attacks, who had seen friends and family killed, who had every reason to be afraid, still chose unconsciousness every single night. And it was not just sleep. The more studied humans, the more he saw this pattern repeated. They drove vehicles that could kill them with a moment of distraction. They ate foods they knew might be contaminated. They fell in love with other humans despite knowing those relationships might end in pain. They had children despite knowing those children might suffer or die. Everything humans did was a calculated risk, and they almost always chose to take the risk rather than hide from it. Finished his report and sent it to headquarters. He knew they would flag it as potentially compromised. His previous reports had been questioned too, because the things he described seemed impossible. But he had included full sensor data and observation logs. The evidence was undeniable. Humans slept because they refused to live in fear. He thought about Sarah, who would be going to bed soon. She would check her door locks, a minor precaution, and then she would turn off the lights and close her eyes. She knew about the bacteria and the viruses and the parasites. She knew about the criminals and the predators and the accidents. She knew that tonight might be the night something went wrong. And she would sleep anyway. Watched her through his monitors as she performed her nighttime rituals. She brushed her teeth, removing some of the bacteria that lived in her mouth. She washed her face, cleaning away the microscopic creatures that had accumulated during the day. She changed into her sleeping clothes and climbed into her bed. For a moment, she lay there with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling, wondered if she was thinking about the dangers, if she was considering, just for a second, whether she should stay awake. Then she turned off the light, pulled her blanket up to her chin and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was unconscious. Sat in the darkness of his own apartment and watched the steady rise and fall of her chest on his monitor. He felt something he had never felt before, an emotion his species did not have a word for. It was a mixture of fear and admiration, of horror and respect. These creatures knew the monsters were real. They had studied them, documented them, built entire industries around the fear of them. And every single night, billions of them chose to close their eyes and trust that tomorrow would come. Did not know if humans were brave or foolish, but he was beginning to suspect that the difference might not matter. He saved his observation logs and prepared to spend another sleepless night watching a human do the impossible. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice wondered what it would feel like to close his eyes and simply trust the darkness. He pushed that thought away. He was not human. But sometimes, just for a moment, he almost wished he was. Part 3. The final report on humanity took 3 standard cycles to complete. Senior analyst had worked with a team of 40 specialists, reviewing hundreds of thousands of hours of observation data, consulting with experts from dozens of species, and arguing through countless interpretations of what they had found. Now she stood before the Galactic Council again, ready to present their conclusions. The room was fuller this time. Word had spread about the strange humans and their impossible behavior, and representatives from species that rarely attended council meetings had come to hear the final assessment. Could feel the weight of their attention as she took her place on the platform. "Honored delegates," she began, "3 cycles ago, I stood here and told you about a species that sleeps despite knowing the monsters are real. I asked for time to study this behavior and understand what it means. Today, I am ready to share our conclusions." She touched the control, and a holographic display appeared behind her. It showed a timeline of human history, stretching back thousands of years. We began by trying to prove that humans are irrational, said. We thought perhaps they simply did not understand the dangers they faced. This theory was quickly disproven. Humans have excellent threat assessment capabilities. They study their predators in detail. They develop sophisticated defenses against bacteria and viruses. They build structures specifically designed to protect them while they sleep. They are fully aware of what can hurt them. She changed the display to show human defenses. Walls and locks, medicines and vaccines, weapons and alarm systems. We then tried to prove that humans are suicidal on a species level, she continued. We thought perhaps they had some biological drive towards self-destruction. This theory was also disproven. Humans fight very hard to survive. Their medical technology is impressive for their development level. Their emergency response systems are sophisticated and effective. When faced with immediate threats, they respond with speed and determination. The display changed again, showing humans fighting diseases, rescuing each other from disasters, building civilizations in hostile environments. We then tried to prove that human sleep was different from what we thought, said. We thought perhaps they remained partially aware during unconsciousness, the way some of our species do. This theory was more difficult to disprove, but ultimately we found no evidence to support it. Human sleep is genuine. During their deepest sleep cycles, they are almost completely unaware of their surroundings. They can be touched, moved, even spoken to without waking. A murmur passed through the room. Several delegates made sounds of distress. So we were left with a puzzle, continued. Humans know the monsters are real. They are intelligent enough to understand the danger. They are motivated to survive. And yet they still sleep deeply and regularly every single night. She paused to let this sink in. We could not explain this behavior using our normal frameworks, so we had to develop a new one. She changed the display to show something unexpected. It was not a chart or a graph. It was a collection of human images. A soldier sleeping in a trench between battles. A parent sleeping next to a sick child in a hospital. A refugee sleeping on the ground in a crowded camp. An explorer sleeping in a tent on a frozen mountain. We have been approaching this question incorrectly, said. We asked why humans sleep despite the danger. We should have asked what it means that humans sleep despite the danger. She turned to face the council directly, her 4 arms spread wide in the gesture of important truth. Human sleep is not a vulnerability they tolerate. It is a statement they make. Every night when they close their eyes, they are saying something to the universe. They are saying that the monsters will not rule their lives. They are saying that fear will not control them. They are saying that they have the right to rest, to dream, to be at peace, and nothing in the darkness can take that right away. The room was completely silent now. Every delegate was watching her with full attention. Consider what this means, continued. Consider the courage it requires. These creatures know exactly what can hurt them. They have studied every predator, every disease, every accident that can end their lives. They have created entire art forms around the fear of things that hunt them in the night. They tell their children stories about monsters under the bed and shadows in the closet. She pointed to the images behind her. And then they turn off the lights and close their eyes anyway. She changed the display one final time. Now it showed a graph of human history with markers for every major threat they had faced. Plagues that killed millions, wars that devastated continents, natural disasters that destroyed cities. Through all of it, there was one constant. The humans had kept sleeping. They slept through the Black Death, said. They slept through world wars. They slept through famines and floods and fires. No matter how bad things got, no matter how many monsters emerged from the darkness, humans lay down every night and chose to be vulnerable. Because they refuse to let fear win, she concluded. Because they have decided that life is not worth living if you cannot rest. Because they believe, on some deep level, that the morning will come and they will wake up and face whatever the world throws at them. She turned to face High Commander directly. You asked me 3 cycles ago if humans are foolish or insane. I told you I did not know. Now I have an answer. Leaned forward. And what is your answer, senior analyst? They are neither, said. They are brave, not the kind of bravery that fights when cornered, not the kind of bravery that acts in moments of crisis. A deeper kind, a quieter kind. The bravery of creatures who look into the darkness, acknowledge everything that lives there and say, I am not afraid of you. I am going to sleep now. I will see you in the morning. She let those words settle over the room. Our recommendation, she continued, is to reclassify humanity immediately. They should no longer be considered a developing species at high risk of self-destruction. They should be classified as a potential dominant species in their region of the galaxy. On what basis? Asked the Silicate Collective representative. On the basis that any species which can make peace with the darkness is not a species that will be easily destroyed, replied. They do not fight the fear. They do not deny it. They accept it, process it, and then choose to rest anyway. This is a kind of psychological strength we have never encountered before. And if we make contact, asked the Chorus Prime Ambassador, what do we tell them? Thought about this for a long moment. We tell them the truth, she finally said. We tell them that the galaxy is full of dangers they have never imagined. We tell them about the void creatures and the hostile civilizations and the cosmic events that can wipe out entire systems. We tell them everything that waits for them in the darkness between the stars. And then, chromatophores shifted to colors that her species used for absolute certainty. And then we watch them process this information, acknowledge the fear, and go to sleep anyway. Because that is what humans do. That is who they are. And honestly, it will probably be the most terrifying thing we have ever witnessed. The vote was taken. Humanity was reclassified. And somewhere in the galaxy, a species that had no idea they were being watched settled into their beds, turned off their lights, and closed their eyes. The monsters were real, the humans knew it, and they slept anyway. Because the monsters were not going to win, not tonight, not ever. In the morning, the humans would wake up. They would face whatever the day brought them. And when night came again, they would lie down and choose peace, just as they had done every night for thousands of years. It was not rational, it was not logical, it was something better. It was human.